it's been almost a month, I think, that we talked about my idea to make an entirely knitted version of a Regency dress. I think a lot of times we think of projects being kind of like this route that you take from an idea to the end point. I'm hoping that eventually we will arrive at the end game, which is making a Regency dress. But as I sunk my teeth a little bit further into learning how to do lace on my Brother knitting machine, I realized that I had gotten a little bit off track and we ended up with a completely different garment from a completely different time period. So let's pop on over to my knitting machine and let's see what we end up making this time.
Seeing as we're going to be making a bunch of lace today, we have to start back off at the machine first. It might be a little tight to be able to fit one of the panels on here. Like, I want to make my lace panels as big as the panels of my sewn under dress.
Okay, so very quickly, as a brief summary of exactly what we're doing, because I don't think I introduced that very well, is I would like to create a Regency dress, but I want to hand knit that like mesh overlay. There are examples of this from that time frame. This is from the Danish Museum. This is an entirely hand knit overlay piece, which is just incredible to me, but I'm going to be making mine on the machine, which there was also a machine knit version at the V&A, which I can't show you due to copyright reasons. And then I decided to design my own dress, which is kind of Bridgerton inspired, which has a blue silk underlay and a machine knit lace overlay. The underdress and overdress are going to be made from the same pattern, so I want the knit pieces to match up to the sewn pattern pieces. That's what I'm talking about here.
I printed out the largest one, I taped it together, and now I'm going to hold it up out here to see how wide I can get it to be. It looks like I can only make up to a size 4 of the largest panel of the skirt for my dress.
And yeah, I am not a size 4 on this pattern. I am somewhere between a size 14 and 16. So a size 4 is definitely not going to work for me, so I'm going to have to think of a different way of doing this.
I can also try is to make a few more gauge swatches that are a little bit lower tension to see if I can stretch the width of these panels in blocking just a hair. So I'm going to do another gauge swatch, and especially this one I didn't finish any of the edges, so they're unraveling. So I'd like to do some more gauge swatches where I can actually steam block them and measure them and get some better information on what size to make my panels so that my overdress and my underdress kind of match up, hopefully.
So I honestly do not remember what we were talking about or saying the last time I updated you all, because I ended up getting really sick. I've been quite ill for the last 3 weeks now, and I have been trying to get back on it, and I'm finally feeling mostly better. I tried to get back to it a few days ago when I had a migraine, and we ran into a lot of issues, so I thought I would wait for a clear-headed day to revisit. So let's take a look at what some of the problems are and see if we can fix it. You know, that's one of the things that I find pretty frustrating sometimes in my day is when I'm really motivated to work on my project, but I am too unwell to be able to actually think through all the different complicated things that I need to think through because my projects tend to be kind of grandiose. But nothing would make me feel better when I'm not feeling well than to do some knitting, which is where the sponsor for today's video, Hooks and Needles, comes in. We're gonna start by taking a look at this incredibly adorable box. I really enjoy it, and Hooks and Needles is a subscription box for yarn lovers. If you knit or you crochet, or whoever you're thinking about getting this for does as well, then you can choose the box that's most appropriate to you. It could be a one-off or it could be a recurring thing. I am drowning in yarn as it is. I have more than enough yarn and I have enough projects to last me the next 10 years. So I was thinking, how exactly could this be applicable to me? I don't want to let you all know about something that I wouldn't myself use. I never thought of this particular use case when my brain and body is too fried to think of doing something myself or to get the things together for a project, but all I want to do is something with my hands. Knitting and crocheting calms me so much. This is kind of perfect for that. I mean, there's multiple uses, right? There's other uses where if you are not yourself a knitter or crocheter, but you want to gift someone who knits and crochets something, my go-to answer has always been give them a gift card to a yarn shop. Think though that this could be a very good substitute for that, or an additional choice or option for that if you prefer not to give gift cards, because it includes everything in here that you need to make
more than one project. Here is the booklet, which is your cozy corner for knitting inspiration, and it contains all of the information that you need with patterns that you have for stuff that you're going to make. I think in this one we've got a lot of purses. You can also get the digital versions of all the patterns here. It also comes with all the needles and the different sizes that you need, and then it comes with this beautiful yarn. I feel like they must have known that one of my favorite colors is blue. It's absolutely beautiful, this yarn. This is Hooks and Needles Harvest Moon. It's 100% wool with 65.5 yards per 50 grams. It also comes with darning needles to help weave in all the ends and sew your pieces together. Buttons, because you need buttons for some of them. Like this just contains everything, as well as a little trinkets kit with stitch holders, because I think every month or every box comes with like an extra gift, and I think this was this time's extra gift. So it has everything that you need to do these. I think for me it's 3 projects for this month, which is great. I didn't know if this would be something necessarily for myself because I already have so much yarn and I already have so many projects that I'm working on, but this is wonderful for when I'm feeling not so great right now, because I view it almost like you know those meal kits that you can get that come with all the directions, all the ingredients, the entire everything together. Even if like I know that I can do all these things from scratch and know I have all the stuff that I need, or I can go out and get the stuff I need, but it's just so nice to take some of that planning out sometimes. The one thing I will say is this yarn comes in skeins, hanks. So you do need to wind this either by hand or with a Swift and a yarn winder, or however you prefer to wind it. I mean, you can knit directly from this. It might turn into a bit of a knot. I've tried it, but you do need some way to wind this if you would prefer. If this is something that might interest you, then I highly recommend checking out Hooks and Needles. They were kind enough to give us a discount offer as well, so make sure to check out the links. It'll be in my description down below. Thank you again so much to Hooks and Needles for sponsoring them. And like I said, I do try to make sure that whatever I do talk about is something that I can really stand behind. And while I was initially a little bit hesitant because I tend to be a little bit on the side of I already have so much, why would I need this? And I'm seeing way more uses for it than I originally thought, and it really brightened up my day when I got it, especially with how poorly I've been feeling. So thank you very much, Hooks and Needles. And now let's head back to my knitting machine and see what we can hopefully maybe accomplish on that. So the last time I was at my machine, I was attempting to make the gauge swatch for knitting this lace because I want to know exactly how wide and large I need to be knitting these pieces in order to match the pattern pieces of my dress. Now here's a bit of the issue. It might be not so easy to tell. Maybe if I take these weights off, you can see it a little bit more. So you might be able to see that here and here and here, there's some irregularities in the lace. And I don't think I have it happening right at this moment, but what I've been noticing is that, okay, do you see how these knit loops are around only the needles? They're around just the needles. There's also these pegs here at the front, and the stitches, the yarn, is supposed to go in front of them like this. But what I've been noticing, and what happens when you get something like this or like this happening, is that this slips on the other side of it. I don't know how that's happening. One of my theories is that I'm not knitting with enough weight on the bottom of this. Usually with lace patterns, you need generally on the knitting machine, you need quite a lot of weight on the bottom to pull the pattern pieces down. I'm gonna go see if I can find some better, because these were really only putting weight on very specific parts, and it was kind of I don't like how these are acting, so I have some other weights that I'm going to try out that I brought with me. Okay, so these are weighted bars, so I feel like they distribute the weight a little bit better. Sometimes you want a little bit more weight at the ends, or else you get stuff happening like here where it kind of gets loose. This is a practice round and my gauge swatch, so we're trying to figure it out. Oh, actually, there's one spot that I can try to show you, I think, where the same problem is happening. Let me take the weights off and you can see a little bit better. Right there. Can you see that? This loop right here, and if I can actually pull it up and over this peg, oh gosh, that's really hard to see. It's off that peg, and then you'll see how it kind of
leads to this issue in the lace. Let's see if we can avoid that happening again. Okay, so here is my gauge swatch off the machine. This is my first attempt that went a little sideways, as you can see with the larger holes here, the big rip that happened here. This is a looser tension than what I knit before, and I made all those changes that I talked about. I tightened up the tension, I lubricated my machine, and I did something else, but I can't remember it right now, but that led to this bit of the sample up here. I do think the quality of this looks much, much better. We had a few hiccups, but not as many. I do wish that the looser tension could work. So this is actually the fabric of the final dress, kind of the petticoat that goes underneath, the lace overlay, and it just feels a little opaque. I don't know. I don't think that I've mastered the lace technique yet on this new to me machine. I think I'll need a little bit more practice until I can make really large panels of lace that are, or like I feel good enough about to use for my dress. So I think I'm gonna practice making a little bit more lace. Should I do it at the looser tension? I kind of want to do it at the looser tension to see if I can get that working. So let me practice that a little bit and see how far we can get. I have this piece of lace off of the machine now. The left side of the machine has some sticking points with the lace. The samples that I did before were very much more on the middle of the machine, which ran smoothly without any issues. I did a wider sample this time, and on the left-hand side and like a few times on the right, I had some hiccups. I am so glad though that I'm practicing this, because the first few rows, it took me a long time to spot what the mistakes were and figure out how to fix them. But now I can see it just as I'm doing it because I know this lace pattern so well. But in order to figure out what is going on with each side of my machine, I think I'm going to do at least 2 more samples where I'm going to cast on and knit on just the right half of my machine and then cast on and knit on just the left half of my machine. I have currently 2 theories on why I'm having some trouble. One is I think I hung too much weight. You need a good amount of weight on your knitting in order to pull the stitches down. I had more weight on the left side of my knitting than the right, and I think that causes some problems when it's trying to move into the right direction. Just a theory, so I'm going to hang less weight. The other one is regular use unsticks pieces of the machine in certain areas. So I'm hoping that if I work on just the right side and then just the left side, maybe unstick some of that stuff that was causing it to gum up. But it's pretty late in the evening, so I'm probably going to stop for this evening with this little sample of lace work, and we'll continue in the morning with casting on some more bits of this and practicing on different halves of my machine and seeing if we can figure out what exactly is causing it to gum up. Knitting these lace pieces, I'm knitting it only on the left side of the machine to test out what's going on with those issues that I'm having. You can kind of see that there is extra wrapping going around the gate pegs, and rather than sticking the loop from one needle to the other needle, I think my lace carriage is sticking it from one needle to the gate peg. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check, because it's always happening in the same spot on my lace at the moment. So I'm going to check the gate pegs in that area and see if there's something that I can tell that's either bent out of shape or if there's something wrong with the needles around that issue area. The thing is, I already knit my test piece on the right side of my machine, and rather than like trying to figure out what was going on, I don't know why, I was just manipulating it by hand to fix the issues. If I can figure out that that's the problem on the left side, I'm gonna have to knit another piece on the right side because I don't remember where all the issues were happening, so that I can fix that, and maybe even the center of the machine, because I'm not getting the overlap in the middle. So before I knit like the really wide pieces of lace, I would really prefer to be able to just do it automatically rather than having to hand manipulate all the errors and issues that pop up every single row. So let's loosen the tension, check all the needles, and see if I need to bend any of my gate pegs back in a different direction.
You know what's wild to me? There's a gate peg very obviously bent out of shape right here, but there's been no issues with the lace sitting right there. So it makes me kind of doubt the bent gate peg theory. But I also just felt all of the latches on all the needles around where the issues are happening, and they're operating very smoothly. I'm just gonna re-grease it. Well, it's not greased, lubricated, I guess. See if that helps. Oh, the issues right there. Okay, so I did change the tension of the yarn mast, which is the yarn that feeds into the knitting carriage. After I thought about it, it's impossible for my kind of yarn wrapping around the gate peg problem for that to be the issue. I see how it's the problem for another kind of related issue, but not the same thing. Anyway, I won't get into the technical details, but it is fascinating to learn more about the machines like this. However, the gate peg positioning was the problem. So as I have been feeling them, it's a really slight difference, but what is consistent between all of the ones where the yarn has wrapped around the gate peg rather than been transferred to the needle over, the gate pegs are more forward from where I'm sitting and looking at the machine. They're closer to the needles. And I guess that interrupts the action of moving one stitch over to the next needle. And so when I use my screwdriver, I probably should find some pliers to do this, but I use a screwdriver to bend them a little bit backwards. It's fixed it completely. So I'm really excited. I think we found the problem. So my gate pegs are bent. Let's wrap it up quickly with this section, which is I want to double check because I had problems last night on the right side of the machine. So I need to do another pattern test on the right side of the machine, and then I want to do a pattern test on the middle of the machine. You might be asking, why don't I do it across the entire machine? I do want to do a test across the entire machine, but it's a lot to take all at once. So I'm kind of splitting it into thirds, which is making it a lot easier, and I may or may not be actually making something out of these pieces. So it kind of works out best of all worlds. I have 2 more pieces to knit, and I have 2 more sections of my machine to test out. I promise I'll show you what I'm making at the end of this. So if you were a little bit impatient, decided to skip right to the end to see exactly what it is that I'm knitting, also don't worry, I think I would have done exactly the same thing, then you might have guessed that this is actually a 1940s bed jacket. It is hot in the summer here outside, so I'm a lot of times wearing something sleeveless, but when I come indoors, my parents' house has radiant cooling that works very, very well. It is kind of freezing inside, so this is the perfect lightweight cover-up jacket to keep me warm while I'm inside without absolutely boiling if I have to step outside for a second. The baby alpaca in the lace pattern is just that perfect breezy but warm. I promise I will be getting back to knitting on the Regency dress. I have figured out the lace pattern forwards and backwards on this machine. It's actually fascinating. I can talk about that a little bit more in detail next time. I'm so sorry I didn't get to, I was planning on doing so much more in this video, but I ended up getting so sick, so I wasn't able and I didn't have the time or energy to do that. However, I do hope that you enjoyed it this time, our slight detour on our way to making the Regency knit dress, and I'll see you again very, very soon as I continue working on that project. Thank you so much. Bye.